The fluorescent hum of the bank branch felt less like ambient noise and more like 1,000 tiny needles piercing my exhausted brain, each vibration amplifying the frantic thrum of my own pulse, a desperate drumbeat against my ribs. The crisp white paper in my hand, a printout of my mother's final bank statement, shimmered with a horrifying clarity under the harsh overhead lights, each line of text a fresh wound, each numeral a shard of glass. My breath hitched, a phantom hand squeezing my throat, suffocating me, as the final balance, a stark, undeniable zero, stared back at me with mocking indifference. $400,000. Gone. Not a dime left for the funeral arrangements, not a cent for the modest headstone we'd discussed, the one with the carved lilies Mom always loved. Just a desolate, empty space where a lifetime of prudent savings, of careful investments, of hard-earned security should have been. The name, Marcus Johnson, appeared repeatedly in the transaction history, a chilling, rhythmic beat of betrayal that echoed in the sterile quiet. Each entry, a confirmation of an insidious act. My brother, the man who lived 3 states away, who called once a month, his voice always distant, detached, who visited twice a year, his presence as fleeting as a shadow. The man who had held power of attorney, supposedly protecting our mother's assets while I changed her diapers, spoon-fed her pureed food, and gently wiped the confusion from her fading eyes. The realization hit me like a physical blow, a wave of nausea washing over me, leaving me utterly breathless, clinging to the cold edge of the counter, my knuckles white as the true scale of his perfidy, once a vague, uneasy suspicion, now screamed through every cell of my body, threatening to shatter every memory, every bond, every piece of my world. For 3 agonizing years, my life had been a meticulously sculpted testament to love and sacrifice, carved from the raw material of exhaustion and unwavering devotion. I was Keisha Johnson, a registered nurse, 42 years old, accustomed to the controlled chaos of an emergency room, the crisp scent of antiseptic, the urgent rhythm of life and death, the quick decisions that meant saving a life. But 3 years prior, I had made a choice that irrevocably altered my path. Trading the familiar beeping of hospital monitors for the quiet, often heartbreaking needs of my mother, Eleanor. The diagnosis had been a brutal, unforgiving sentence: advanced Alzheimer's. The slow, insidious thief that had already begun to steal fragments of her vibrant personality, turning cherished memories into mist, familiar faces into strangers, leaving behind a bewildered stranger in the shell of the woman I adored. I remember the conversation with my hospital supervisor, a kind but pragmatic woman named Dr. Evelyn Carter, in her cramped, windowless office that smelled of stale coffee and a faint, lingering scent of regret. Her eyes holding a deep understanding. "Keisha," she'd said, her voice soft, her expression sympathetic. "We understand your mother needs you. You're a remarkable caregiver. But this is a full-time commitment, 24/7. Your nursing career, the skills you honed over 2 decades, you'll be putting it on hold, perhaps permanently. Are you sure you're ready for that kind of sacrifice? For the financial implications?" My gaze had drifted to a framed photo on her desk. Her own elderly mother, vibrant and smiling, a mirror image of the woman my mother once was. "She needs me, Evelyn," I'd replied, my voice thick with emotion, a fierce conviction burning in my chest, unshakable. "There's no other choice. She cared for me my whole life, bandaging scraped knees, reading bedtime stories, guiding me. It's my turn to be her comfort, her protector." The decision to quit my $80,000 a year hospital job, to trade my sterile scrubs for comfortable, often stained sweatpants, my professional identity for the invisible, demanding mantle of caregiver, had been agonizing, a wrenching departure from a life I had built. It meant sacrificing my career trajectory, the decades of experience, my slowly accumulating retirement savings, my hard-won financial independence. At the image of my mother, her eyes clouded with confusion, her hand reaching out for mine, a silent plea that echoed deeper than any financial spreadsheet, had been an irresistible pull, a primal force. I believed then, truly believed, that her assets, the comfortable home she'd paid off with decades of hard work, the steady investments, the modest savings gleaned from a lifetime of frugality, would be a shared resource, a safety net that would sustain her care and, eventually, provide a measure of security for Marcus and me, a testament to her foresight, her enduring love, her careful planning. How naive I had been, clinging to a vision of shared responsibility and familial integrity that my brother, even then, was already meticulously dismantling, brick by insidious brick. My mother's decline was a slow, agonizing slide into oblivion, each day a new step further from the vibrant, opinionated, deeply loving woman I remembered. The vibrant Eleanor, who had once taught me to bake her famous peach cobbler, the sweet aroma of cinnamon and warm fruit filling our kitchen with her laughter, who had drilled multiplication tables into my head with fierce, loving patience, her fingers tracing the numbers on my palm, began to disappear, piece by agonizing piece, like a sandcastle slowly eroding with the tide. At first, it was small, forgettable things, a misplaced set of keys that turned up in the freezer, a repeated question about breakfast she'd just eaten, a blank, unfamiliar stare at a once-cherished family photo. But the progression was relentless, an unyielding tide that washed away her memories, her independence, her very self, leaving behind a hollow echo. Soon, the simple tasks became insurmountable mountains. Dressing, bathing, eating, all required careful, constant supervision, a gentle prompting, a steady hand. The once bright, curious eyes, always sparkling with intelligence, became clouded, her movements slower, more hesitant, her once graceful hands trembling slightly. The sharp, witty humor that had defined her gave way to moments of quiet confusion, punctuated by sudden, disorienting outbursts of fear or anger. When she didn't recognize me, her own daughter, seeing a stranger where love should have been. The smell of incontinence pads became a constant presence in our once immaculate home, mingling with the faint, comforting scent of her favorite lavender body lotion, a bittersweet reminder of who she was. Changing her diapers, gentle and careful, became a daily ritual, a profound act of love that stripped away my own dignity but affirmed hers, protecting her fragile modesty. Sleepless nights blurred into exhausted days, her restless murmurs and occasional cries for a past that no longer existed, pulling me from a fitful slumber, leaving me perpetually bone-weary. The physical toll was immense, my back aching, my hands raw, my energy perpetually depleted. The emotional drain was even greater. There were moments of despair, of utter helplessness, when I would sit by her bedside, holding her frail hand, feeling the delicate bones beneath my fingers, watching her vacant stare, and weep silently, the tears burning tracks down my face, greeting the mother who was slowly slipping away, her essence fading like a ghost in the twilight. But then she would squeeze my hand, a flicker of recognition in her eyes, a faint, almost imperceptible smile, a brief return to the woman she once was, and I would find the strength to carry on, fueled by an unwavering love, a primal urge to protect her, to be her rock in this terrifying shifting landscape. My brother Marcus lived in California, 3,000 miles away, a bustling banker with a carefully curated life of success and ambition. His world of high finance a stark contrast to my daily reality of caregiving. His involvement in our mother's care was at best tangential, a distant echo of familial obligation, a polite formality. He called once a month, a quick, almost perfunctory check-in, his voice always crisp, efficient. tinged with a subtle impatience as I recounted the latest challenges, the newest losses, the gradual erosion of Mom's mind. "Just keep me updated, Keisha," he'd say, his tone implying that my struggles were merely administrative details, a burdensome chore. "You're doing a great job. Send me the big stuff." He visited twice a year, flying in for a weekend, his crisp suits and designer luggage a stark contrast to the comfortable, slightly disheveled reality of our home, the visible symbol of his separate, pristine life. During these visits, he'd sit with Mom for an hour or two, engaging her in simple, repetitive conversations, his smile a little strained, a performance for my benefit. Then retreat to his hotel, ostensibly to catch up on work or take important calls. He rarely offered to help with the physical demands of her care, shying away from any task that involved true intimacy or discomfort. Always finding an excuse, a looming deadline, a crucial call, an aversion to anything messy or inconvenient. He had insisted on taking power of attorney for Mom's finances, his rationale delivered with a smooth, irrefutable logic, practiced and persuasive. "Keisha, you're a nurse. You understand medical. You're brilliant at that. I'm a banker. I understand finances, asset management, investments. It only makes sense. We'll both play to our strengths, maximize efficiency." I, exhausted and overwhelmed by the daily demands of caregiving, by the endless cycle of feeding, bathing, comforting, had readily agreed, trusting my brother, believing in his competence, grateful for his supposed willingness to shoulder that burdensome responsibility. I focused on the immediate tangible needs of our mother, ensuring her comfort, her dignity, her safety, while he managed the more abstract world of investments and bank accounts, a world I was too weary, too emotionally drained to navigate. The arrangement, I believed, was a testament to our sibling bond, a fair division of labor born of mutual respect and shared love. Utterly unaware that he was already calculating his own insidious gain, meticulously setting the stage for a betrayal that would leave me utterly destitute, clinging to the shards of a shattered trust. The financial strain had been a slow, insidious creep, barely noticeable at first, a faint, distant whisper of worry, then growing into a suffocating weight that pressed down on me day after day. My nursing salary, once a comfortable cushion, was gone. The small emergency fund I had accumulated, meant for my own future, for a rainy day, began to dwindle, slowly at first, then with increasing speed, like sand through an hourglass. There were Mom's medications, many of which weren't fully covered by insurance, the copays adding up, the specialized dietary supplements she needed to maintain her strength, the occasional hiring of a respite caregiver for a few precious hours, a rare luxury that allowed me a quick grocery run, or a moment of precious, silent solitude to simply breathe. The unexpected repairs to the aging home, a leaky roof, a failing water heater, each expense, small on its own, accumulated into a daunting sum that kept me awake at night. I kept meticulous records, every receipt tucked into a shoebox, every debit card swipe noted in a small ledger, a habit born of my nursing training and my mother's lifelong frugality, her insistence on being prepared. I paid for these expenses from my own dwindling savings, telling myself it was temporary, that once Mom passed, her assets would be there, a safety net, shared fairly between Marcus and me, a promise of stability after the storm. I wrote checks from my personal account for her physical therapy, for the new grip bars installed in the bathroom for her safety, for the specialized pressure-relieving mattress that eased her bed sores. There was a nagging worry, a persistent hum of anxiety in the back of my mind, as my own retirement savings, once a source of quiet confidence, began to disappear, fading into oblivion. But I pushed it aside, reasoning that this was what family did, what love demanded, what a daughter owed her mother. My mother's comfort, her dignity, was paramount. Marcus, I believed, was managing her assets, ensuring they were protected, growing even, quietly accruing interest, a silent promise of future security. The irony of my meticulous record-keeping, a testament to my honesty, my integrity, while Marcus, the banker, systematically emptied her accounts with forged documents and fabricated claims, would later burn with a corrosive, bitter irony, a chilling testament to his profound deceit and my heartbreaking naivete. My mother's passing, 3 years into my relentless caregiving, was a quiet, almost merciful release. She had simply faded, her breathing growing shallow, each inhale a little weaker, her grip on my hand weakening with each passing hour, until finally, in the soft pre-dawn light, surrounded by the gentle hum of her oxygen machine, a peaceful stillness settled over her. She simply stopped breathing. The house, usually filled with her soft murmurs, her occasional coughs, her quiet presence, felt profoundly, eerily silent, a heavy, empty space. Grief, deep and pervasive, washed over me, a tidal wave of sorrow for the vibrant woman she had been, for the mother I had lost, and for the long, arduous journey we had shared, the profound intimacy of her final years. But amidst the grief, there was also quiet exhaustion, a profound weariness that settled deep in my bones, a bone-deep ache that would take years to dissipate. I longed for peace, for the opportunity to finally begin processing my own loss, to rebuild the life I had so utterly put on hold. It was in the days immediately following her funeral, a simple, dignified service attended by a small gathering of family and church friends, the scent of lilies and worn hymnals still lingering in the air, that the cold, hard reality of Marcus's betrayal began to fully coalesce. With a heavy heart, I started the practical tasks, canceling her subscriptions, notifying utility companies, sorting through her modest belongings, and then the bank. I called her bank, requesting the final statement, hoping to access funds for the remaining funeral expenses, for the cremation. That's when the horror, full and undeniable, slammed into me. The branch manager, a polite, apologetic woman named Ms. Evans, her voice tight with professional concern, informed me in hushed tones, almost a whisper. "Ms. Johnson, I'm so sorry to tell you this, but your mother's accounts appear to be entirely depleted. There's a zero balance, nothing left." My stomach clenched, a cold knot forming, my breath catching in my throat. Depleted? How? Impossible. My brother Marcus has power of attorney. He's been managing everything, ensuring her financial stability. Her voice, softer now, tinged with a hint of warning, confirmed my growing dread, a terrifying premonition. "Yes, Ms. Johnson, it appears that over the past 3 years, Mr. Johnson systematically transferred funds out of the accounts. Large sums, all classified under caregiver expenses and medical costs." The receiver, warm against my ear a moment ago, suddenly felt icy cold, heavy as a stone. Marcus, the banker, the man who understood finances, he had stolen it all. A dizzying wave of nausea washed over me, the phone slipping from my trembling fingers, hitting the kitchen floor with a dull thud, the sound echoing in the sudden, terrifying emptiness of the house, in the cavernous void of my shattered trust. The silence in the kitchen, broken only by the frantic beat of my own heart and the buzzing in my ears, was deafening. I stared at the phone on the floor, its dark screen mocking the sudden darkness that had descended on my life. The abrupt absence of light. My first call, after what felt like an eternity of disbelief, of staring blankly at the wall, was to Marcus. His number, once a source of familial comfort, now felt like dialing into an abyss of lies, a direct line to betrayal. His voice, when he finally answered, was breezy, detached, tinged with a faint irritation at my unexpected call, a casual annoyance at being disturbed. "Keisha, everything all right? I was just about to head into a meeting. Can this be quick?" I took a deep, shuddering breath, trying to steady my voice, but it came out as a raw, trembling accusation, choked with fury. "Marcus, Mom's accounts, they're empty. $400,000, gone. The bank said you took it. For caregiver expenses. What did you do? What in God's name did you do?" The line went quiet, a beat of uncomfortable, pregnant silence, before his voice, now stripped of its breeziness, hardened into a defensive, self-righteous tone, cold as ice. "Keisha, don't be so dramatic. I managed her finances. That's what I did. And frankly, that takes time, expertise, years of my professional knowledge. You think that's free? That my time has no value?" My blood ran cold, a sickening realization. Time? Expertise? I spent 3 years changing her diapers, Marcus. I was there, every minute of every day. Seating her, bathing her, comforting her, holding her hand. You visited twice a year, for a few hours. I never got a dime. I paid for her care out of my own savings, depleting my entire retirement fund. His laugh, sharp and dismissive, sliced through my rising fury, a cool, mocking sound. "You chose to do that, Keisha. No one forced you to be a martyr. I, on the other hand, made significant financial sacrifices managing her assets, investing, transferring, dealing with paperwork, coordinating with advisors. It's hard work, taxing work. I was reimbursed for my time, for my professional services. It's entirely justified." Reimbursement. The word hung in the air, a grotesque mockery of my sacrifice, of my mother's trust, of the very meaning of family. He saw my boundless love, my selfless devotion, as a free service, a woman's duty, while his occasional phone calls and minimal oversight were, in his warped reality, worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, a king's ransom. The utter audacity, the brazen entitlement, the cold, calculated cruelty of his words ignited a cold, searing rage deep within me. A fire that threatened to consume everything in its path, reducing my world to ash, but also burning away the last vestiges of my familial affection for him. The next day, a package arrived from Marcus, express delivered, the sound of the delivery truck tires squealing outside my house echoing my internal turmoil. It was almost certainly an attempt to preempt further questioning, a desperate move to control the narrative. Inside, a thick envelope crammed with documents, purported receipts, invoices, and meticulously detailed spreadsheets, all neatly organized, designed to impress. He had categorized everything, neatly itemizing financial management fees, consultation services, travel expenses for oversight, and a litany of obscure medical costs and caregiver expenses that amounted to an almost identical sum to the $380,000 he'd transferred. As I sifted through the papers, my hands trembling with disbelief and growing fury, the smell of cheap toner ink clinging to them, the details began to scream with blatant falsehoods, each one a fresh assault on my intelligence. A receipt for specialized memory care equipment from a supplier I'd never heard of, for amounts far exceeding anything my mother had needed, for technology that didn't even exist. An invoice for in-home nursing consultations from a fictitious medical agency, its letterhead clumsily designed. Daily caregiver assistance charges, dated on days I was the only person in the house, changing her, feeding her, loving her, performing every single act of care. Some of the receipts were crudely forged, the dates slightly off, the fonts inconsistent, the vendor names sounding vaguely legitimate, but upon a quick internet search, proving utterly non-existent, phantom companies. My medical background, my years of meticulously charting patient care, instantly recognized the glaring inconsistencies, the fabricated details, the scientific impossibility of some of his claims. He hadn't just stolen, he had meticulously, cynically constructed a paper trail of lies, believing his sister, the exhausted caregiver, would be too overwhelmed, too grief-stricken, too ignorant of financial intricacies to notice, to challenge him. The nausea returned, a wave of disgust so profound it left me gasping, clutching at my stomach. The depth of his deceit, the calculated cruelty of it, was a betrayal that went beyond mere financial theft. It was a profound violation of my trust, of my love for my mother, of the very bond of family, a sickening testament to his utter lack of conscience. The exhaustion from 3 years of relentless caregiving had been profound, a physical and emotional weariness that seeped into my very bones, leaving me perpetually drained. Now, it was compounded by a crushing financial ruin and a searing guilt that twisted in my gut. How could I have been so blind, so trusting, so foolish? Had my unwavering focus on my mother's physical needs, on her comfort and dignity, made me negligent in protecting her financial security, her legacy? The thought gnawed at me, a relentless self-recrimination, a bitter accusation echoing in my mind. My retirement savings, once a comfortable buffer against the uncertainties of life, were now a hollow echo, depleted by countless out-of-pocket expenses for my mother's care. Expenses Marcus now claimed he had reimbursed himself for, adding insult to profound injury. My former nursing colleagues, when I cautiously reached out, offered sympathy and heartfelt condolences, but little practical advice for navigating this unique blend of familial betrayal and complex financial fraud. I felt adrift, isolated, the vast chasm of Marcus's betrayal separating me from the world, from friends, from any sense of normal life. There were days I simply couldn't get out of bed, the weight of it all pressing down on me, physical and emotional, the grief for my mother intertwining with the agony of this new monstrous loss, a double burden. I cried until my eyes were swollen and gritty, until there were no more tears left, until my throat was raw. But then a flicker, a memory of my mother, strong and resolute, teaching me to stand up for myself, her voice firm but kind, her hand gentle on my shoulder. "Keisha," she'd said, during a childhood spat with Marcus, his early signs of self-centeredness already apparent. "Don't let anyone walk all over you. You deserve to be heard. You deserve to be respected. Your worth is not determined by others." Her words, echoing from a happier past, from a more innocent time, ignited a spark of righteous anger, a simmering fury. Marcus had taken everything: her money, my peace, our shared legacy, our very sense of family. But he wouldn't take my dignity. He wouldn't get away with it. The overwhelming sense of helplessness began to recede, slowly replaced by a fierce, cold resolve, a steeling of my spirit. This was no longer just about personal recovery. It was about justice, absolute and unyielding. The turning point was a quiet, internal shift, a hardening of my resolve in the face of insurmountable odds. One afternoon, sitting amidst the scattered pile of Marcus's fraudulent documents, the smell of cheap toner ink clinging to them, a single photograph caught my eye, a thin, glossy square. It was a faded Polaroid from my mother's 65th birthday, years before her illness had begun its slow, cruel work. She was beaming, her face wreathed in genuine joy, her arm wrapped around Marcus, who stood stiffly beside her, a forced smile on his face, his eyes distant, already calculating, even then, while I, my arm around her other side, was genuinely laughing, my face alight with uncomplicated happiness, her hand linked in mine, a true connection. The contrast was stark, the manufactured affection, the hollow pretense, versus the effortless, visceral love that flowed between my mother and me. That photograph, a silent testament to her enduring spirit, despite his hollow pretense, solidified my decision. I wouldn't just grieve, I would fight. My first step was small, cautious, taken with a trembling hand but a firm heart. I called a local elder abuse hotline, my voice trembling as I recounted the unbelievable tale, the words feeling clumsy, almost shameful, as I spoke of my own brother, of his monstrous betrayal. The woman on the other end, her voice kind and steady, her tone professional but empathetic, listened patiently, allowing me to fully unravel the story. "Ms. Johnson," she said, her tone professional but empathetic, "this is precisely the kind of exploitation we see far too often. It's not your fault. You were focused on care. He was focused on greed. You were a loving daughter. He was a thief. We can help you." Her words, "It's not your fault," were a balm to the corrosive guilt that had been eating away at me. The first crack in the wall of my self-blame, a ray of light penetrating the darkness. She provided me with crucial contacts, a pro bono legal aid organization specializing in elder financial abuse, and a recommendation for a highly regarded forensic accountant. The path ahead was daunting, a long, winding road through legal complexities and familial heartbreak, but suddenly, I wasn't walking it alone. The knowledge that there were people who understood, who believed me, was a profound source of strength. My meeting with the legal aid attorney, a sharp, compassionate woman named Maya Sharma, was a lifeline, a beacon in my storm-tossed world. Her office, modest and bustling with other clients seeking justice, was a world away from the gleaming corporate towers Marcus inhabited. But her focus was laser-sharp, her determination palpable. She listened to my story with an unwavering gaze, her dark eyes missing nothing, occasionally jotting down notes. Her pen scratching softly on her legal pad, the sound rhythmic and reassuring. "Keisha," she said, when I had finished, my voice raw and hoarse from recounting the painful details. "What your brother did is not just morally reprehensible, it's criminal. This is a textbook case of elder financial abuse, a profound breach of fiduciary duty under his power of attorney, and outright theft and fraud. We will pursue this on all fronts, civil and criminal." The thought of taking my own brother to court, of pressing criminal charges that could lead to prison, churned my stomach, a knot of conflicting emotions. But the image of my mother, frail and vulnerable, her confused, trusting eyes, and a cold, calculated look in Marcus's eyes when he justified his actions, when he dismissed my suffering, hardened my resolve. Maya immediately connected me with a renowned forensic accounting firm, a small but highly specialized team known for their meticulous investigations. My first meeting with Mr. David Chen, a man whose quiet intensity was palpable, felt strangely familiar, as if we had both navigated the treacherous, often solitary waters of family betrayal. He listened to my tale with a solemn nod, his own past experiences, which he briefly alluded to, giving him a unique, empathetic understanding of my plight. "Ms. Johnson," he said, his voice calm, reassuring, "our job is to follow every penny. We will trace every transaction, verify every claim, and expose every lie, no matter how deeply buried or cleverly disguised." The process was grueling. I spent weeks delivering boxes of receipts, bank statements, credit card bills, Marcus's forged documents, every scrap of paper that documented my 3 years of agonizing caregiving. My life reduced to a pile of financial records. The forensic accountants meticulously pieced together the financial puzzle, sifting through decades of bank records, cross-referencing my mother's income with her expenses, comparing Marcus's fraudulent claims against reality, building an unshakable case. The long hours were physically draining, emotionally exhausting, revisiting every painful detail. But each confirmed fabrication, each undeniable instance of theft, strengthened my resolve, transforming my grief into a powerful, unyielding demand for justice, a righteous fury that fueled my fight. The evidence mounted, an unassailable fortress of truth against Marcus's flimsy web of lies. Mr. Chen's team of forensic accountants painstakingly traced every single transaction from my mother's accounts, meticulously rebuilding the financial timeline, They found the large, systematic transfers to Marcus's personal accounts, hundreds of them, disguised as caregiver expenses and medical costs, each one a calculated theft. They cross-referenced his purported receipts against real market rates, finding egregious inflation and outright fabrication for services that either cost a fraction of what he claimed or never happened at all. They interviewed former employees of the fictitious medical agencies he had cited, proving they never existed, that they were shell companies created for his deception. They confirmed that every single transaction labeled caregiver expenses, directed to anyone other than a legitimate third-party caregiver, was in fact money he had funneled directly to himself, his greed insatiable. And then came the stark, undeniable proof of my own sacrifice, my meticulous shoebox of receipts, the small ledger where I had dutifully noted every out-of-pocket expense for my mother's care, from her specialized dietary needs to the co-pays for her doctor's visits, from her incontinence supplies to the new ramp built for her wheelchair. Every single purchase documented, provided irrefutable documentation. The forensic report, a thick, meticulously detailed binder filled with charts, graphs, and damning conclusions, concluded with absolute certainty that Marcus had systematically stolen $380,000 from our mother's accounts, and, heartbreakingly, it confirmed that I, his sister, had personally spent $60,000 of my own dwindling savings on her care, receiving zero compensation, making my sacrifice a profound testament to love, brutally exploited by greed, by his cold calculations. The emotional growth I experienced during this phase was immense, a painful but necessary metamorphosis. Confronting Marcus's depravity, witnessing the cold, calculated nature of his theft, shattered the last vestiges of my naive trust in him. But seeing my own sacrifices validated, quantified in black and white by objective professionals, began to heal the deep wound of guilt. My love for my mother was not foolish, it was pure. My caregiving was not a weakness, it was an act of profound strength, of unwavering devotion. My value, my worth as a daughter, as a caregiver, as a human being, could not be diminished by his greed, by his lies. This fierce clarity, this unshakable certainty, prepared me for the battle ahead, to look my brother in the eye and demand justice for what he had stolen, not just from our mother, but from me, from us all, from the very sanctity of family. The filing of the elder abuse complaint and criminal charges against Marcus felt like stepping onto a battlefield, the air crackling with an almost tangible tension. Heavy with the weight of consequence, I stood in the prosecutor's office, my lawyer Maya Sharma beside me, her hand a reassuring presence on my arm, the weight of my decision pressing down on me, heavy as stone. Reporting my own brother to the authorities, knowing it could lead to prison, to the absolute destruction of his life as he knew it, was agonizing, a profound wrenching of my soul. But the image of my mother, her confused, trusting eyes, her vulnerability, and the cold calculation in Marcus's voice when he'd called my sacrifice my choice, when he'd dismissed her needs for his own gain, hardened my resolve. The prosecutor, a no-nonsense woman with a weary but determined gaze, her face etched with years of fighting for justice, reviewed the forensic report, her face tightening with each damning page, her lips thinning into a grim line. "This is a clear-cut case of elder financial abuse, Miss Johnson," she stated, her voice sharp, leaving no room for doubt. "The evidence is overwhelming. We will prosecute him to the fullest extent of the law." The civil lawsuit for breach of fiduciary duty followed, a separate but parallel assault on Marcus's betrayal, seeking financial redress for his actions. The legal system, slow and often frustrating, a bureaucratic labyrinth, now felt like a grinding, inexorable machine of justice, slowly but surely closing in on him, leaving him no escape. I had to testify, recounting the agonizing details of my mother's decline, my years of ceaseless caregiving, and Marcus's insidious theft, my voice trembling but unwavering as I spoke the painful truth, facing him in court, seeing his defiant sneer, hearing his lawyer try to discredit my character, to paint me as a disgruntled, greedy sibling seeking revenge, was excruciating, a fresh violation. But I held firm, my voice clear, my testimony unwavering, fueled by the memory of my mother and the validation of my own tireless efforts, the sheer weight of the truth. The forensic accountant, Mr. Chen, delivered his testimony with quiet authority, presenting the irrefutable evidence, each transaction a damning piece of the puzzle, exposing Marcus's carefully constructed lies for what they were: crude forgeries, desperate deceptions, a testament to his profound greed. The trial was a blur of legal jargon, hushed murmurs from the gallery, and the cold, unblinking stare of the judge. Marcus, in his expensive suit, tried to maintain an air of professional competence, an illusion of control, but his composure visibly frayed under Maya Sharma's relentless cross-examination. He stuttered, contradicted himself, his eyes darting frantically when confronted with the irrefutable evidence from the forensic report, his carefully constructed facade cracking under pressure. His lawyer, a slick, aggressive man with an oily charm, attempted to cast doubt on my motives, implying I was bitter and jealous of Marcus's success, that I had exaggerated my mother's needs to deplete her funds, to benefit myself. But Maya, a formidable advocate, deftly countered every insinuation, highlighting my impeccable nursing background, my detailed records, my years of selfless service, proving my integrity beyond doubt. The jury, a diverse group of ordinary citizens, watched with rapt attention, their faces etched with a mix of sympathy and outrage, their gazes often flicking between Marcus and me. Weighing our characters, the testimony of the forensic accountant, Mr. Chen, was the undeniable hammer blow, the final decisive strike. He presented the intricate web of Marcus's fraudulent transactions, comparing them side by side with my meticulously documented expenses, laying bare the profound disparity, the cold, calculating nature of his theft against my boundless love. The contrast was stark, vivid, undeniable. My years of love, sacrifice, and financial transparency against his years of greed, exploitation, and blatant deception. When the jury foreman finally stood, his voice clear and resonant, and delivered the verdict, guilty on all counts of elder financial abuse, theft, and fraud, a wave of profound relief, mixed with a chilling sadness for the broken family, washed over me, leaving me momentarily weak-kneed, clinging to the table for support. Justice, in its slow, grinding way, had finally arrived, a heavy, unyielding reality. The sentencing hearing was a somber affair, devoid of the drama of the trial, yet imbued with a profound, almost sacred gravity. Marcus, no longer in an expensive suit, but in a simple, ill-fitting prison uniform that hung loosely on his now slumped frame, stood before the judge, his face pale, his eyes hollowed by defeat, by the cold hand of justice. He offered no apology, no glimmer of remorse, no sign of understanding the depth of his actions, only a tight-lipped, resentful silence, a defiant refusal to acknowledge his guilt. The judge, a stern but fair woman with an unwavering gaze, spoke with a solemn authority that commanded absolute attention, her words cutting through the silence. She detailed Marcus's crimes, emphasizing the profound breach of trust, the egregious exploitation of a vulnerable parent suffering from Alzheimer's, and the calculated cruelty of his actions against his own sister, who had sacrificed everything for their mother. Mr. Johnson, she concluded, her voice unwavering, clear and firm. Your actions represent a reprehensible abuse of power and a betrayal of the most sacred familial bonds. The court finds you guilty of elder financial abuse, theft, and fraud. You are hereby ordered to repay the full amount stolen, $380,000, plus Ms. Johnson's documented out-of-pocket expenses for your mother's care, amounting to an additional $60,000, for a total of $440,000 in restitution. Furthermore, for your calculated and egregious crimes, you are sentenced to 3 years in state prison. The words hung in the air, cold and definitive, echoing the weight of the law. 3 years, restitution. It wasn't about revenge, not truly, not a joyful vindication, but about accountability. About a system finally recognizing the immense value of caregiving and the devastating impact of its exploitation. I watched Marcus being led away, his shoulders slumped, his once confident stride replaced by a defeated shuffle, the sound of his footsteps fading down the corridor, and felt a strange mixture of sorrow for the family you once were, and a profound, quiet sense of vindication. It was over. The fight was won. The path to closure was long and winding, a slow journey of rebuilding my life, healing the deep emotional wounds, and reclaiming my sense of purpose. The restitution, a substantial $440,000, eventually made its way into my account, a stark and undeniable symbol of justice, tangible proof that my sacrifice had been recognized, that his theft had been rectified. It was a lifeline, allowing me to finally rebuild my retirement savings, to pay off debts incurred during my years of unpaid care, and to start anew, to carve out a future for myself. Therapy became an invaluable tool, helping me unpack the complex layers of grief, anger, and betrayal, to reconcile the loving mother I remembered with the woman whose trust had been so brutally exploited, to process the profound violation. I had to learn to forgive myself for the guilt I had carried, to understand that my selfless caregiving was an act of profound love, not a foolish oversight that had left my mother vulnerable. The physical exhaustion slowly receded, replaced by a renewed energy, a sense of clarity and purpose that had been missing for years. But the experience had fundamentally changed me, forging a new strength within. I couldn't simply return to my old life, untouched by the profound injustice I had witnessed. I became a passionate advocate for protections for family caregivers, speaking at conferences across the country, lobbying state legislators, sharing my story with anyone who would listen, my voice strong and clear. I campaigned tirelessly for reform of power of attorney laws, advocating for greater oversight and stronger safeguards to prevent vulnerable seniors from being exploited by unscrupulous family members, ensuring that no other caregiver would suffer as I had. My voice, once silenced by exhaustion and grief, became a powerful force for change, a beacon of hope for countless other caregivers struggling in the shadows, fighting for recognition, for justice, for dignity. The memory of my mother, once tinged with the bitterness of Marcus's betrayal, now rested in a place of peace, her dignity restored, her sacrifice honored by the justice I had fought for, a legacy of love and integrity finally unburdened by deceit. My journey had been arduous, a painful descent into the depths of familial deceit, but I emerged stronger, more resilient, and with an unwavering commitment to fighting for the invaluable, often invisible, sacrifices of caregivers, ensuring that their boundless love would never again be exploited, their sacred trust never again betrayed, leaving them free to love, truly and unequivocally,